Wind came in low that morning, dragging dust across the cracked earth like a warning no one wanted to hear. Don't do this. The voice trembled, half fear, half disbelief. Rancher didn't stop. He stood there at the edge of the town square, boots planted firm in the dirt, jaw clenched, eyes locked on something only he seemed to understand. Crowd had gathered fast. Word spread quickly in places like this, and now they watched, whispering, judging, waiting. And when he finally took that step forward, the entire town turned against him. The rancher's name was Daniel Hale. For years, Daniel had been the kind of man people relied on. Quiet, hardworking, honest, in a way that didn't need proving. His ranch sat just outside the town, stretching wide beneath the open sky, a place built from sweat, sacrifice in a past he rarely spoke about. He wasn't always this man. For the ranch, before the silence, there had been loss. Years ago, Daniel had a family, a wife named Clara, whose laughter used to echo through the wooden halls of their home, and a son, barely 5, who followed him around like a shadow with questions about everything. Horses, stars, life itself. Then came the fever, forced the region like a storm no one could outrun. By the time it was over, Daniel had buried both of them beneath a lone oak tree overlooking the valley. Something in him broke that day, and something else hardened. From then on, Daniel lived by one rule: keep moving, keep working, don't look back. And for a while it worked, until the day the boy showed up. It was late afternoon Daniel first saw him, a small figure standing near the edge of his property. Then, covered in dust, eyes too old for his face, the boy didn't speak at first, just stood there, watching. Worse. Daniel didn't like strangers, especially not ones who didn't explain themselves. But there was something about the boy, something quiet and stubborn, that felt familiar. "You lost?" Daniel asked, voice rough. The boy shook his head. "No, sir." "Why then what are you doing here?" A pause, then, softly, "Looking for work?" Daniel almost laughed. The kid couldn't have been more than 10. "You got family?" Another pause. A longer one this time. "No, sir." That answer hung heavy in the air. For Daniel looked at him, really looked his time, and saw the signs: hunger, exhaustion, the kind of loneliness that doesn't come from a single bad day, but from too many of them stacked together. Worse, he should have sent the boy away. That would have been the easier choice, the safer one. But instead, Daniel sighed and jerked his head toward the barn. "Start with the horses," he said. "If you're still standing by sunset, we'll talk." Boy nodded. Didn't smile. Just got to work. His name was Eli, and from the moment he stepped onto that ranch, something began to change. At first, Daniel kept his distance. Eli worked hard, harder than most grown men, and never complained. He learned fast, listened closely, and spoke only when necessary. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. Still, Daniel didn't ask questions, or didn't want to know where the boy came from, didn't want to feel responsible, because responsibility meant risk, and risk meant loss. Life has a way of slipping past the walls we build. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of fire, Daniel found Eli sitting by the fence, staring out at the horizon. "Of course, something on your mind?" Daniel asked. Eli hesitated, then said, "Do you ever feel like you don't belong anywhere?" The question hit harder than Daniel expected. He leaned against the fence beside him. "Worse, more than I'd like to admit," he replied. Eli nodded slowly. "My mom used to say, everyone belongs somewhere. You just have to find it." Daniel swallowed. "Your mom sounds like a smart woman." "She was," Eli said. "She just didn't stay long enough." Silence settled between them. Not uncomfortable, just honest. From that night on, things were different. Was teaching Eli more than just chores. How to ride properly, how to read tracks, how to fix a broken fence before sunrise. But more than that, he taught him how to stand tall, how to endure, how to keep going when everything in you wants to quit. And in return, Eli brought something Daniel thought he'd lost forever: warmth, laughter, a reason to come home before dark. But not everyone in town saw it that way. Whispered began to spread. "Where'd that boy come from?" "Street kid, probably. You can't trust someone like that. And Daniel, what's he thinking?" The town had its rules, unspoken but clear. Where starters didn't belong, and people who broke those rules paid for it. The breaking point came on a market day. Daniel had brought Eli into town for supplies. It was to be simple, quick in, quick out. But as they walked through the crowded street, conversations quieted. Eyes followed them. Judgments hung thick in the air. Then someone spoke up. "You planning to keep him, Daniel?" It was Mr. Starton, Carter, the town's unofficial authority, a man who believed order mattered more than compassion. Daniel stopped, turned. "Not your concern." Carter stepped closer. "It becomes my concern when you start bringing unknowns into this town. Or don't know who he is, where he came from, what he's capable of." Eli stiffened beside him. Daniel felt it. The fear, the tension, the same feeling he'd known all too well as a boy himself. "He's a kid. We're steady. That's all that matters." Carter shook his head. "That's not how this works." "No," Daniel replied. "That's exactly how it works." The argument spread like wildfire. By nightfall, the town had made its stance clear. Eli had to go, or Daniel would face consequences. That's how it led to this moment. The town square, the gathered crowd, and the voice begging, Don't do this," or Sarah, the school teacher, one of the few who understood what was at stake. "If you defy them," she said, "you'll lose everything." Daniel looked around, at the people he'd known for years, at the place he'd built his life. Pride piece he was about to shatter. Then he looked at Eli, standing small but unbroken, waiting, not begging, just waiting. Daniel exhaled slowly, forcing got worse, and made his choice. If you believe in kindness and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Wild Cowboy Storytime. I'm not sending him away. The words landed like thunder. Worse, rippled through the crowd. Carter stepped forward, furious. "Then you're no longer welcome here." Daniel nodded. "I figured. You'll lose your land." "I'll manage." "You'll lose everything." Worse. Daniel's gaze didn't waver. "I already did that once." Silence. Heavy. Unforgiving. But beneath it, something shifted. That night, Daniel and Eli packed what they could. The ranch would be taken. The town would turn its back. Everything Daniel had rebuilt, gone. Eli watched him quietly. "You don't have to do this," the boy said. Daniel paused, then shook his head. "Yeah," he said softly. "I do." "Why?" Daniel looked at him, really looked. And for the first time in years, his voice broke just a little. "Because someone should have done it for me. They left before dawn. No goodbyes, no looking back. Just two figures riding into a row. Uncertain horizon. The journey wasn't easy. Days blurred into nights. Supplies ran thin. Storms rolled in without warning. There were moments when doubt crept in, quiet, persistent. But they kept going, together. Worse, not much at first. Just open land, wild and unforgiving. But it was theirs. And that was enough. Years passed. The land changed. The small beginnings grew into something real. A home. A life. Eli grew, too, wiser. He carried the lessons Daniel gave him. Not just about survival, but about compassion, about courage, about standing for what's right, even when it costs everything. One evening, much like the one years ago, they stood side by side watching the sunset. "You ever regret it?" Eli asked. Daniel smiled faintly. "Not for a second." Eli nodded. "Me neither." Far away, the old town remained, unchanged in its ways. Stories have a way of traveling, but sometimes they plant seeds. Because years later, when another lost soul stood at the edge of that same town, unsure where to go, someone remembered. Someone stepped forward, worse than this time. They didn't turn away. Daniel never went back. He didn't need to. Because the choice he made that day, the one that outraged an entire town, it didn't just change his life. It changed something far bigger. For men, in the end, when people spoke of him, they didn't talk about the land he lost. They talked about the life he saved. The wind still moves across the open plains, carrying stories, carrying choices, carrying the quiet truth that sometimes doing the right thing will cost you everything, but it will also give you something far greater. A reason to stand, a reason to believe, and a reason to never turn away again.